Once upon a time in the jungle, the tiger was preparing for a feast with his friends. He sent out an invite notice to the animals in the jungle stating that only the first 20 animals to make it to his house will be admitted into his feast on that day. The fastest animals like the cheetah, the leopard, the lion, the hare, the antelope, and some other fast creatures were not bothered. They were very certain they would get to the tiger's house as soon as the break of dawn on the day of the feast. Beside a quiet pond lived a proud tortoise known far and wide for being slow, but he had a confidence about him that was as big as his shell. He heard the tiger's announcement and decided that he must get there on time and be amongst the first 20 to be admitted into the tiger's feast. The tortoise spent days and sleepless nights thinking of how best to get to the tiger's house before the other fast animals. One morning, he set out to measure how fast he could go on his own to the tiger's house, and it took him the whole day to crawl there. At this pace, I will only get there when the feast is ended, he said to himself. I must find a way to get here first. As the tortoise was awake one night, a brilliant idea struck him. He jumped from his bed and thought out loud, there are only 2 ways that leads to the tiger's house. If I can get some slimes on that road, I will be able to give myself a push, he thought. The tortoise got out of bed and quickly headed to meet his friend, a tiny shy snail. While the snail is gentle and humble, the tortoise, with his grand shell and bigger size, thought he would be fun to prove that he was faster and perhaps smarter than most animals. Using his friend the snail, my dear friend, I would like us to visit a house far away tomorrow. I am looking to marry one of the daughters in that house. Slide the tortoise. The snail was very happy for his friend and agreed without hesitating to accompany his friend to look for his music wife. The next day they both set out on the journey. One more thing, the TST said as they were about to step out, please leave sticky trails of your slimes on the path as we move, so I can be able to locate my way next time when I'm going alone. The snail agreed to the request, and they continued on their journey as they moved as fast as their legs could carry them. The snail was releasing his slimes on the path. The tortoise followed up closely, smiling beneath his breath. They walked all day until they got very close to the tiger's house, and by then it was already night, and the tortoise convinced his friend the snail that his bride was inside this compound, but he would come back another day since it was already late. The snail felt sorry for him without knowing the tortoise had a master plan. All this while by morning, as they were returning, the TST suggested that they take the second road that leads to the tiger's house, and he reminded the snail to keep dropping the sticky slimes as they walked back to their house. The snail agreed innocently without knowing the tortoise plan. The night before the day of the feast, all the animals were set and ready to race out by dawn and make it to the tiger's feast. The animals gathered under a huge mango tree, and the fast animals were boasting and beating their chests that they will get to the feast before anyone else. The tortoise came out to the center of the jing and announced that he would be partaken in the challenge. The animals gazed at him mockingly. You are one of the slowest creatures ever, said the antelope as he laughed out loud. How would you manage to participate in this quest? Your legs are literally very short, and the shell behind you is heavy. How can you run with that and get there on time? The hyena said mockingly. They all laughed out loud and made fun of the tortoise at the ridiculous claim he made. Well, replied the tortoise, I guess I'll have to put a prize on this. If anyone amongst you gets there before me, I would willingly become your servant and tend to your daily needs for a whole year. However, if I get to the tiger's feast before whomever it is, you will tend to my needs for 2 years. The animals burst into laughter at the confidence and ridiculous stare of the tortoise. The teeter stood up and declared interest in the bet. I would bet you, Mr. Tortoise, he said. I am the fastest animal in this kingdom. I want to see how you can outrun me tomorrow. The tortoise nodded in agreement and crawled back to his house feeling excited. By dawn, at the first cockcrow, the animals got out of their houses and started racing towards the tiger's house as they all made their way down the road that leads to the tiger's feast. The road was so slippery the cheetah, the light, the hyena, and the antelope kept tripping and sliding backwards as they tried to run. The sticky slimes on the road was making it difficult for them, and the cheetah suggested that they take the second road leading to the tiger's house. They all went back to use that road. Lo and behold, the second road was filled with slimes too, and they couldn't run on it. They tried as much as they could, but the road was too slippery. They kept sliding backwards and falling over themselves. At this point, the Tortoise was all alone on the first road they had abandoned, and so he stepped on the slimes and started gliding down the road. The Tortoise rode on the slimes and kept moving forward until he got to the tiger's house. He was the first animal to get there as the other fast animals were still struggling with the slippery road. The tiger was astonished to see the tortoise as his first guest. He opened up his gate and led the tortoise into his feast. The tortoise pounced on the food and ate to his F. By midday, the cheetah arrived at the feast. He thought he would be the first to arrive as the others were behind. Him on the slimy road. There is no way that slow Tortoise would have fought of those sticky slimes to get here, he muttered to himself as he made his way down to the fist field. On getting there, he saw the Tis devouring a plate of meal in front of him. How did you get here so fast, you slow creature? He screamed in shock at the Tis. The Tis shrugged his shoulder and laughed at the cheetah music. It doesn't matter, my friend, I won the BT, and you will tend to my basic needs for 2 years as agreed, said the Tis boastfully. The other animals arrived later in the day, and they were all surprised when they realized the Tis got to the fist before all of them. Till this day, the Tis never revealed how he got to the tiger's feast. Even before the fastest animal in the jungle, he kept the secret to himself and relieved his victory from time to time. This is the end of my story.